Whenever I sit to do another project with a custom UI, there are always two parts. So the cool part, namely styling, animations, and micro interactions, and the boring part. That's the markup. Plus, most of the time, I tend to leave accessibility to do last, and eventually I forget about this. Mostly customers don't really require this, but I found this to be something I want to include in my projects. So, some time ago, I've embarked on a journey to find a decent headless UI system that will lift this problem out of my back. The requirements were, well, first and foremost, it should provide proper markup and satisfy area patterns outlined by Web Accessibility Initiative. Most problems come with forms, so it has to support all the form elements that you would use. This is input, select, I don't know, range slider, upload field, whatever you think of that can be used to interact with a user to get a user input, it should be included. Next, it should seemingly integrate with whatever styling system I want to use. CSS, like vanilla CSS, CSS modules, Tailwind, styled components, Panda, whatever. It should be easy to combine. Next, it should have proper props that allow me to control these elements. So it should have like things like on submit, on press, or on click, is disabled, is focused. So all these things should be exposed. And last but not least, it should be very well documented. I don't want to spend my time going through types or source code on GitHub to find out how to use certain element. I simply want to have a documentation with examples, with description of what certain element does, and I want to be able to use it whenever I need to. I realize this is a tall order. That's why it took some time to find. I went through several blog posts, YouTube videos, Reddit threads, and eventually I arrived at React Aria. I found that it has everything I need. Recently, I also found out that Headless UI has a second version. It's made by folks from Tailwind and it really looks good. I haven't tested it yet, but I will soon. With that said, let's jump to the terminal, create an empty React project, install React Aria, and see how this thing handles. Okay, so I will start by creating a empty Vite project with React, and let's call it React Aria demo, and it should be React with TypeScript. And it is installed, so all that's left is go to React Aria demo and pnpm install. Right, so now, since this is installed, we need to add React Aria components. The fact is this is not a development dependency, so simply pnpm add without -d React Aria components. And that's that. So we will see each other in a second in the IDE. Alright, and here we are. All I did was to add prettier and make it run on save. So let's start the dev server. And as you see, we have a fully styled application. It comes with some CSS already defined. No, I don't want any single style in here. I want to see how this library works without any stylings. So in app tsx, again, tons of stuff we don't need. Perfectly valid component that's returning null. All right, so let's create a form that will ask for a favorite album and a favorite song by famous British genius David Bowie. So in order to start, we will need a form, and React area comes with a form component. It's honestly nothing fancy, just a form. Nothing fancy is there. It has on submit, on reset, on invalid, all things you would normally expect, right? Right. So what we need is a list of albums to allow people to select one, right? So let's create an array that will have ID, let's say low, title low. I will, well, nice. I guess ChatGPT or Google Copilot knows David Bowie, so this is great. Let's add some more because this is Berlin trilogy, tragedy, scary monsters and super creeps. Sorry, kind of like this. And let's say outside, as this is one of my favorite albums by Bowie. Right, so we have this 5 elements. I think the choice is pretty obvious here. That means you cannot pick just one, but nevertheless we will force our users to do so. All right, so in order to start receiving data, we need a function to do so, right? Because this form in its heart is a normal HTML form. So by default, it will do what a form does. So without specifying a method, it will default to get and will just append the form data into the URL in here and reload the page. So we don't want this, right? We want a function to handle the submit, and event is form event from React. And the first thing we need to do when building a form, I'm sorry, this is kind of, it said correct thing. It's just I don't want to show you that everything can be generated because it's not everything can be generated. Right, so the first thing we want to do if we are trying to intercept the form submission is to say prevent default. We want to prevent the default action, that is, like I've mentioned, appending the data and refreshing. And of course, on submit now, as you can see, it accepts a function that has event of form event and function that returns a void. So handle submit. I wonder if it would accept, it would also accept a asynchronous function, so that's good. Right, so we have prevent default. So now we can get form data from new form data of event. Okay, have it. Okay, so we have our form data, and normally you would extract data from here using, for example, I don't know, object from entries and send it further, validate it somehow if you need. But for the sake of demonstration, let's just do this. Yeah, object from entries, form data. So it will just take all the contents of form data and print it as a collection of objects. And in here, we will also have, I mean, not a collection of objects, but an object, single object, sorry. And in here, console table, we'll just print it in a nice, well, table. Yeah. Right, so we have a function, we have something that will intercept the problem. So now let's build our actual form. So we can start by either select or select album or type favorite song. Let's start with selecting album. So select again, provided by React Area, and we need to give this a name. So then we can identify this field further on when we will be proceeding this. Right, so what we want is we want select your favorite Bowie album. We want a label, right? Because every field in a form needs a label. Note that I am putting this inside because the React area works strongly with contexts. So this component is actually creating a context of a select. And now things will get a bit, let's say, jumpy because we will not be creating a select with options, but instead we need to create a button that will look like a select. This is a rather bold decision from React Area's developers side, and this is for easing of styling. So if you want to build a drop down that is more complex, for example, it has title and subtitle, this is perfectly fine. With a normal drop down, you wouldn't be able to do this. The downside is on mobile, it also looks the same. So normally when you are using iOS or Android, these systems has their own these systems have their own handling of input selection. So you see a popover or a menu on the bottom that you can scroll to that corresponds with the options. In here you just see a scrolling select. I haven't found a elegant way to mitigate this. The only way I found is to simply hide the whole select on the mobile and just render the regular HTML select there. But this kind of messes with the accessibility thing, so not the best option. Regardless, we need to create a button that, of course, React Area also provides. And in here we place select value, so we know what has been chosen, and you can just add a span that has area hidden true. Hold on, I have this in here, like carrot pointing down. Okay, so we have a button, and now we need to create a popover. So popover is a element that shows when requested, and it basically is a portal that renders in place. So if you think of a drop-down, popover is kind of like a drop-down container. So now we render a list, so we need to use a list box, and this is cool. We push items in here, and now, as I've mentioned before, React Area works strongly on contexts. So what we have here, this is a render props pattern that was popular like 7 years ago. Right now I don't see it often, but nevertheless it is a pattern. I don't want to get into whether this is a right pattern and whether this is something you want to use, but sorry, it certainly it certainly works. Right, so we have a select your favorite Bowie album. And what is funny is that it renders the text wybierz element, that select the element or pick your element in English, in Polish. This, of course, can be customized, but for now, let's just see how the list looks. It looks like a drop down. Literally, that's it. It looks like a drop down. Of course, it can be navigated by arrows. I can expand this with enter, select with space, or I can expand with space and select with enter, whatever I choose to do. Okay, so we have this. And let's change this default text to something more interesting. So again, select value, as I think all components in here work in the same manner. So of course we can just say pick one, right? And it will be pick one always because we haven't put anything in here. So it's just a static value, but again, run the props. So it has default children that will be the selection, and it has its placeholder. Right, so now is placeholder, pick an album, and if not, default children, exactly. Maybe let's just to be a bit more readable. Right, and now we have pick an album. I pick Heroes, and it's there. I refresh. I don't pick. What is this? I don't pick anything. Pick an album. I pick something. It's there. All right. So now I want to make sure that people will submit this, right? So in order to put a submission, we obviously need a button, right? So again, button, type submit. That's it, right? And remember, we have on submit here that is that will be propagated to this function, and it should log out stuff. So let's try. I will pick I don't know, outside, because I listened to it frequently recently, and submit. And we have path album, so the name of the field, and we have the value, which is the ID. It always works like this. It needs ID and any other element, so any other key. And as you saw in here, we've never used any sort of ID in here. That's kind of the magic behind React Area, that it takes this collection and it enhances this item with the ID, and of course with all the accessibility stuff. So as you can see, we have role option, area selected false, tab index, data key, we have IDs, and we have class as well. So if we want, we can style this using the provided CSS, like have provided default styling for this, or we can add our own classes. So it has this, obviously. My problem mostly is that it's all goddamn divs. But, you know, maybe it would be better as a list, I don't know. But React Area provides a way to create your own elements and just have the props. So if you are really bothered with this being a collection of divs, you can jump over and create your own stuff. It's not hard. Right, so we have this and we have our submission that console logs beautifully. All right, but let's make sure, because we can do we can submit an empty value, and I don't want this. Like I've said, you have to choose. This is, you have to choose. So what we can do is we can mark this as required, and right now this field is required and submission won't happen, and you see it got highlighted. So when I can go here and I click wherever, click submit, and this element, so the first erroneous element, gets highlighted, so I get to work on it. This is very good UX. So you are being brought to the erroneous field. When you have a form that is longer than your viewport, and let's say you are on the bottom and you're submitting and you're hearing there is an error, and you have to scroll up and look for a red border or something, that's kind of not nice UI. And in here we have this. Great. Right. So how do we notify our user that this is a problem? Well, luckily, React Area also comes with something that is called field error. And as you can see, please select an item. So it already tells us, like in here, please select an item. Of course, we can, I don't know, do a break line here to make it easier, and I don't know, small. Something, but not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the error is rendered here. And one more thing that we can do with field error is, done, we can of course use render props, but the cool thing is it tells us the validation details. So for example, validation details, and if validation details, and you see we have a lot of fields to choose from. We can have value missing, that's our problem right now. We can have too long, if we want for example only 5 characters, somebody input 6 characters, too long. We can have too short, if we want 5 characters minimum, somebody enters 4. We can have range underflow or range overflow if the number is too big or too small. We can even have a pattern mismatch, that if you remember my video on validating HTML forms using browser, you know that every input accepts a pattern as a validation request. So in here we can say whatever we want. So value missing, return, please select an album, and default we can return null, or we can just return unknown error, something like this, whatever. But the good thing is we can just, think what kind of errors can occur here. And well, if this is a select box, well, the only problem is somebody might not select the value. So value missing is the only reason. But if we would have an input, there would be far more validation problems in here. This sort of handles even more validation problems that we have that we solved with our HTML validation. And of course, React Area also supports Zod if you want to create this super tangled, complex validation schema. All right, so we have this. Let's just leave. Please select an album, because again, there will be no other error in here. And if somebody does something to hack this thing, it won't go through probably. Right, so we have a field. What else? We want an input field, right? So text field and name song path song, right? So again, is required already right off the bat. Uh, Type will default to text. So if you want a number, type number. If you want something else, type something else. But it always defaults to text. So label type. Now enter your favorite Bowie song. Again, tough question. And input, just that, field error, and we have it in here. And let's refresh. Again, I click submit. I'm seeing, hold on, let's add like a break line and maybe something like this to be able to read it better. Right, so error is please select an album, and of course the field is highlighted. And if I select and the error is gone, and when I click submit, sorry, please enter song. If I click submit, I am moved to another broken, let's say, invalid input. So the first from the top. I don't know, wild is the wind or hollow space void. Oh, I don't know. I can go on. I can go on. Okay. And now we submit, and I have speed of sound from low to be correct, and I have fifth album as low. I actually did rate low the highest on Writer Music. I rated 5 out of 5 because I think this album is brilliant. Right, so this is the input field, and again is required, right? We can have like min length, max length, and express this in field error, right? Like we did earlier. So that's basically it for this little introduction. As you can see, creating a fully valid, fully comfortable from UX perspective form using React Area is really, really, really easy. So we imported quite a lot of components, and of course this is always an overhead. This is always like another library, right? And it's quite big, to be frank, because if you look at the types, it's tons and tons and tons of types. So imagine that every type in here has to be somehow handled by the application. So it is big, but nevertheless, I believe that if we care for users that are not, let's say, as, I don't know, as fluent in computers, as able in handling mouse and keyboard as we are, this is something we should utilize. Building UIs, whether it's for a single application, whether it's a design system, is complex already. But building UI that is accessible is way harder. That's why tools such as React Area are such a great help for everyone trying to build an inclusive application. I know that I haven't fully explored this library. I rather scratched the surface and only showed one part. it has much more. For example, hooks that allows you to utilize the logic and build your own markup. I strongly suggest you check it out. That's it for this week. Thank you. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, maybe add a comment, and see you next week. Happy coding.